Tuned into Out of the Voice Box, where candid conversations bring great minds together from across the nation.
Join us for access to cutting-edge voice-related information you won't find in a textbook. Yet.
We are your hosts, Sarah Charney
and Nathaniel Sundholm.
The opinions and viewpoints on this program are those of the featured individuals, not their respective institutions. This program is not a substitution for medical care. Welcome back, listeners. We're honored to be joined today by none other than the India Carney. Woo! Yeah! Welcome to the show, India.
India, one of my longest and dearest friends, has performance credits that only continue to grow by the minute. We met and performed together at LaGuardia Performing Arts High School in New York City, and India went on to continue her work, developing a performance career that is nothing less than tear-provoking. Of note, this New York City native tours with the award-winning pop artist Katy Perry and has sung for Grammy Award-winning artists such as Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish, Meghan Trainor, H.E.R, Natasha Bedingfield, Mavis Staples, and more. She has performed at the VMAs, Grammy Awards, BET Awards, the Ellen Degeneres Show, Coachella, and more. Her original music collaborations fuse her pop, folk, classical, R&B, acapella, jazz, and musical theater influences. And most recently, she's been developing new works, untouchable Instagram content, and it is hard to believe that we were able to catch up with her. And as a matter of fact, I just turned my TV off after watching one of her original voiced songs on a commercial. India, tell us a little bit about that.
First off, thank you for that introduction. That was so nice of you, Nathaniel and Sarah. I just booked an American Express commercial promoting their small business campaign for this holiday season 2020. And I am singing a solo a cappella version of Auld Lang Syne. And there's also a full-length version with choir and strings that's available on streaming sites too.
Amazing. So listeners, do not miss out this holiday season. If you're hearing this in the middle of July, take this as an opportunity to celebrate early.
Yes, India, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us. So let's get started. We know that you are widely known for a lot of things: vocal ingenuity, flexibility, genre fluency, and dependability. None of this is by chance. So we want to know, what are your go-to things to keep your voice feeling fresh and performance ready? Do you have anything that you typically do?
Yeah, what's interesting is that I think this is now my pivot point to start changing that routine. But up until now, because I'm 27 now, so my body's just changing. But usually I like to eat before I sing. A lot of people don't, but I like to sing on a fuller stomach. And so I'll usually just go for whatever I want, which is probably not great. I'm speaking to two voice doctors here, but I will eat a cheeseburger before I go on stage. With that said, I am trying to steer away from dairy, but I just like a nice hot meal. I usually steam my throat. I have like 3 different portable steamers I have here, but I recently did the old-fashioned boil a pot of water. That works perfectly. You actually feel like you're in a sauna. So I've started recommending that to my students. Put my head over a pot of boiling water with a towel and just inhale, and sometimes start to warm up while that's going on. Sleep. I try to get a good night's sleep. And if I can, exercise the morning of. Perfect case scenario would be like good night's sleep, exercise in the morning, have a good breakfast, have a lot of downtime before the gig, and then during all that time, warm up for at least 30 or 40 minutes, and then steam my face and then eat something.
I love it. And in terms of those vocal warm-ups, do you have any favorites?
Yeah, actually, Nathaniel helped me when I was going through laryngitis once. And it wasn't a great time, especially because I don't usually lose my voice like that. Maybe twice that I can remember. So whenever it happens, it is very scary. And I was very grateful to have a friend there to help me through it. And he introduced me to how to use the straw. And that's my new favorite one, honestly. I love doing lip trills, like starting with lip trills for at least like 15 minutes or just until I feel ready to move on. And then go to the straw for a little bit and then go back to the lip trills, just to see how that changed things. And it usually just makes me feel so much lighter. Between those two, that's my favorite. But I also love NG warm-ups, which is something I did a lot in college studying opera, where you just sing on an NG, the end of the word sing. And you just phonate with that for like however long you need to. And that like that's like the what is it? That's like the king of all kings for placement warm-ups in my experience. So that's another favorite.
Absolutely. And India, you just did a really great job at synthesizing how different semi-occluded vocal tract maneuvers, like a lip trill, like the straw, like an NG, can help target different areas of the voice. Listener, if you're a little bit confused about what these things are, don't worry. We will feature these techniques in a future episode, so keep your ears open.
So, and we know that, India, you are the queen of riffing. We want to know, are there things that you do to help warm that up? Or has that been kind of a journey for you, more natural? You don't really have to think about it. What is that journey look like for you?
Honestly, it is more natural for me, but it's natural because I grew up singing gospel in church. So when you grow up in church, you just do it. I know Nathaniel knows he also grew up the same way. So you just grow up.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's how it should be. That's what singing is. That's how it started. It's just this communal, like fellowshipy thing. And that's what it feels like in church. So that's how I was introduced to the agility area of singing. With that said, I mean, I studied opera for a long time. So melismas, which is like their version of riffing. I in opera, you are given a piece of music and you just have to figure out how to do it. So in addition to the riffing I had already been doing, I had to learn how to train my voice to be able to do these new kinds of riffs. Um, and that was really cool. I will say, thank you so much for the compliment. I don't feel like I'm the queen of riffing, but I will say I took a lot from my ear training classes. And so I feel like what is perceived as riffing is actually a combination of like riffing and interval training and just notes and different alternate melodies. That's what or at least that's what I feel like I've transitioned to in my improving. Because riffing, just like all those other things, is a form of ornamentation. And so I try to go for what is an appropriate embellishment as opposed to how can I riff right now. And so when I think of it that way, I prioritize what's appropriate. I prioritize the notes and like different melodies as opposed to the riffs. And then sometimes riffing is appropriate, all in my opinion. But I try and actually do that. And you'll hear like I do a lot of jumps. I find that I gravitate more towards that than the riffing. But it's a nice skill to have. And no, I don't really warm it up. Although sometimes I have this warm up. The cool thing about warming up is you can create your own too. It's just notes. Just pick like an interval or maybe some very easy melody that you can do chromatically and just use that. Just make sure you, of course, do it the right way. If you're using it as a warm up, make sure you're using it to warm up your voice instead of just sing. But like I have one that's like da, 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 and I'll do it like on E, and I'll try and do it as fast as I can. Chromatically, for example, I'll do that sometimes if I feel like I'm kind of out of shape, or just like a pentatonic scale down in succession. Um, yeah, but no, I don't practice it on a daily basis. But I will say it's not just luck, and it's not like just something I don't have to think about. It's because of all of that church and just doing it from such a young age.
Absolutely not luck. India, you work very hard, even though you make it look easy. A couple of things that I really appreciate about your stylistic choices is you really take this horizontal, linear approach to music, in that every embellishment that you create is later either resolved or justified by the melody later on. And I think this is a theme that we're beginning to see more and more in this kind of indie pop, indie soul train of artists that we have been blessed to have. A couple of follow up questions. So, your solo singing voice, your timbre, your vibrato, your choices for embellishment is so unique. It You can listen to your voice in a room of 100, and I would be able to pick out India every time. However, you have also made a significant name for yourself when it comes to singing background vocals and being part of a group. And so you clearly have this ability to code switch between being front of the house India and India, who is helping to create a magical musical moment, not just as you, but as part of a thing. So, how do you, from an ear training perspective, from a vocal approach perspective, timbre, tone, etc., find the balance between your solo voice and your BGV voice? And do you have to take any physical things into consideration for that?
That's a great question. The short answer is sometimes yes, but most of the time, no, actually. I think it's because I spent a lot of time in my singing development, singing in groups. I've sung in choirs a lot, whether it be gospel or classical. I've also done a bit of work in a cappella as well as a director and a singer. So the idea of blending to the person next to me is like very familiar. So I feel like my voice naturally does that pretty well. I will say when I went on tour with Katy Perry, though, that changed everything. In fact, I didn't even know why I was picked. Because while I was auditioning, I was like, gosh, my voice does not sound anything like hers. And maybe I should have done a better job of trying to sound like her for this audition so I could get the job. But it turns out that they picked me because of my tone and because it was different. With that said, though, Katy Perry has coined her own style of singing. It's very placement and vowel heavy, and you can't just pick up. I don't know. At least I couldn't, but I would probably want to say that most singers couldn't just pick up a Katy Perry song and sing it perfectly without thinking about the placement. And that was a huge adjustment I had to do for tour. And I'm still learning how to do that and match her even better. But basically, most of the time, I've just studied it so long. I feel like, and actually, I realized during the pandemic, I picked up engineering recently. And so I now know how to record myself from home, and it's an amazing luxury to be able to do that. But also, I get to be super analytical about my voice. And I think that has grown my ear a crazy amount for better or for worse. But I brought that up to say you start to hear every deviation in the way you sing, how like a wider O vowel is different than a more narrow one, how that affects your pitch and how it affects your tone and what exactly you need to do to be super on, both in the studio as well as when you sing with people. It's like, it's so minute, but it's not for singers who do this regularly. Um, and I mean, what I started singing in choirs when I was 4, I guess. So I've had like a good 20 years of this, which is why it makes sense now. So now I
And
don't have to think about it.
so many drops of wisdom here. I want to highlight one of the things that you just mentioned. So, manipulation of the shape of a vowel or manipulation of the shape of any sound can greatly change the quality of the sound that is produced. And oftentimes, when I'm working with singers who maybe do not have the same amount of choral experience or not used to shaping these vowels, or are stuck in some really stylistic choices where they have certain vowel shapes that they kind of gravitate towards. This can sometimes cause an increase in laryngeal strain and discomfort because you're not utilizing the structures that are supraglottic to help shape and support a sound. Resonance is so important. I want to bounce back to something that you mentioned. So you have a home recording studio now. You are also not new to being recorded. You've been doing this for as long as I know you. You know, recording studios when we were 13 look probably different from how they look now when we're 25 plus.
Right.
So when you are in a studio, either if it's in your home or if you're in a more professional commercial space, what are some of your must-have things? So, for instance, some people say water, an apple, Jolly Ranchers, a humidifier. Are there certain things you need and want in your studio space? And then alternatively, are there things that you will absolutely not have, like smoking or fluorescent lighting or too many people in the room?
Hmm. Definitely no smoking. Every other person in the industry smokes, and it's not great for me. So that's a no. Hmm. Well, I would love to usually have a hot drink, whether it's tea or hot chocolate. One is technically better than the other, but they're both warm and I'll take it. I don't love water because for some reason it doesn't make me feel hydrated. And then I have to burp like at a very inconvenient time of the singing. And I don't know what that's about, but it happens every time. So I actually don't like water. I have to be able to take my shoes off and I need a sweater. I need to feel super, super warm. And I suppose those are my only must-haves, aside from like, I need to work with somebody who, the reason I picked up engineering is because I am a perfectionist, but also I want to be in charge of what's being recorded. And I've met a few producers who really do get me, but for the most part, it's usually better me doing it myself, because people don't hear things the way you do. So another must have, but of course, I'm not going to decline the session if I don't have this, but a producer who really does understand singing and singers and what they need.
So, in terms of what singers need, are there specific things that you require when in the recording studio? We know that these sessions can often be long, so do you insist on taking breaks? Are there certain resets that you use for your voice? What do you do to ensure that you avoid things like vocal fatigue?
Yeah, that's a learning process. I have definitely come a long way, but I think a lot of that is just my personality and not feeling like I'm allowed to speak up. And so I just haven't for so long. That's a personal thing that has also extended to my career. Now I know my voice and myself a lot more to know what I need. We don't always have the luxury of booking out a whole day in the studio, but whenever I can, I'll either book out a day or book out like an extra 2, 3 hours so I have time for that. And I know my voice well enough to know when I'm getting tired, and then I'll stop. And actually, one time I cut the session short because I was like, we're not going to get it, and I need to come back another day.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I probably say more than anything else is time is money, but health is wealth. And if you are in a session where it's just not working, it is totally okay to pull the plug, say stop, and come back another day. Your producer should understand and respect that. Your engineer should understand and respect that, because the raw signal that you put in, if it is excellent, it at the end of the day means less work for them to fix. If your raw signal is trash, it is hard to make trash sound good. Um,
Literally, I just had a session and I felt bad because he was like, I don't know what you're listening to that you need so many takes. And I'm like, trust me, I know my voice. I'm not trying to be nitpicky just for fun. I know what I'm doing. I'm a musician. Trust me. Also, I know I can sing this in tune perfectly and like quality wise perfectly, so you don't have to do too much in post. Let me do my thing.
that's right,
And
girl.
we didn't. I only had to nudge like 3 spots,
Hmm.
which is saying a lot because I love nudging.
All right, we have a couple final questions for you. And this is something that I've really been thinking about over, I think, the last 2 weeks or so, is that, singing in many ways is an art form, right? This is something that's been accepted for hundreds of years. And often the artist, I think, loses some of that definition, right? So if you're thinking about an artist, when you're creating a masterpiece, you're only limited by the paint that you have, the canvas that you have, and the idea that you have in your head. Singing, there is going to be some physiological boundary to the vision that you hear. So, whether that boundary be your range, your ability to hold a note as long as you want to, being able to sing a certain word on a certain note. So, as a songwriter yourself, do you ever feel like you over challenge yourself from your own artistic vision? And when you do feel really challenged or burdened by something that you envision in your head, but you just cannot get it out the way you want to, what are some ways you may adjust what you are physically doing to reach that? So, for instance, maybe changing the key that you're singing the song in or adjusting a melody line.
Yeah, I actually have a song that's just like that. I don't know why I wrote it that well, I wrote it that way because I heard it in my head. It felt right. Every time I change the key, it's too low in the beginning. So it's got to stay in that key. And honestly, perfect case scenario, I would give the song to somebody else and just like demo it up right and find somebody who really can sing it. But it's also a song that I like that I would love to learn myself. It's just in within my range that I could probably train up to it. But yeah, perfect case scenario, I would change the key, or I would just find another compelling line to write in its place. Because both of those are possible. In fact, I've changed keys a lot, and a lot of times it makes it better. It really is the answer. And I guess while we're here, like I learned at a young age because I was about to lose the part that I was up for because I couldn't hit the note. I learned at a young age that I have the range that I have. And there's just something beautiful about knowing your lane and what you are comfortable with and what you do best. A great example is Brandy. I was actually very late to Brandy. I didn't start listening to her until about 2 years ago. But in listening to her, I understood, oh, okay, so you can be good at something and just do it. You can be an alto and sing really low, like Layla Hathaway. You can just have the range that you have and stay in it, and it's fine. I think perhaps with our generation and those before us, we grew up with Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston and these kinds of singing that doesn't really exist in the same way today, which means there's not as much demand to be able to do that. Today's music is much more about what you do best, and I think that's great.
Amazing. India, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Audience, thank you so much for joining us. I hope over these last few minutes you have taken away something special. Share that thing with a singer in your life. If you are a shower singer, sing a little bit louder today.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.